welcome back to Across the Park podcast. Happy New Year. It's our first show of 2023. It sounds weird. That's a nice break. I'm sure we'll get into why it was nice. And then we did plan on doing a couple of podcasts, but I'm sure anyone who lives in this country, in this city, knows that there's been a lot of nasty bugs going around. It took all three of us out at separate times. So we are back. We are going to be back in the pub next week doing face-to-face, but just to get a podcast out there, it's Wednesday lunchtime with Sophia Mills alongside Gary Judge. Before we get into what, for the first time ever, may not be the most unbalanced podcast, we might be on the same side for once, myself and Judge. We'll get into that. Before we do, big thank you, as always, to our sponsors over at Globe Gas and Plumbing, globecentralheating.com. Good lad, scouts in the city, Lee. Had a pint with me on Boxing Day before the game. Top lad, doing all the bathroom and the kitchens. He'll give you 10% off as well if you quote Across the Park podcast, as well as Vir Clothing, virclothing.com. They must have been busy at Christmas. I see people kitted out in Vir Clothing across the city in this month going back to work. They'll give you 20% off as well if you quote ATP at checkouts. Judgy, it's the morning after, the night before. If we'd done this podcast yesterday lunchtime, I think it might have been a different podcast. I think the mood of the fan base is all over the place. Ever since that Bournemouth double-header, I think fans needed the break. The manager needed the break. We came back and had a really bad game at Wolves, then a really impressive game at Man City.
Yeah.
And last night was one of the worst I've probably seen, and we sort of know where this usually ends up. How are you feeling this morning as an Evertonian?
Dejected, deflated, loads of T words, defeated. No, it was a humbling experience, wasn't it? I mean,
yeah.
Brighton, Hove Albion, not exactly the first name that comes to people's lips when they think of the Premier League and they think of top sides, but they completely dismantled us in every way, shape, or form. I mean, we're not here to analyse the game, and I don't think our fans would appreciate that at this moment in time. But we started quite well. I'm gonna go back a little bit when we talk about the game now. I mean, I think the first surprise was changing the shape ahead of that game. As you just said, then poor performance against Wolves set up the way that we did last night. Excellent performance at City, where the players seem to buy in, which I think is a really key term, and I'll come back to that in a moment. They seem to buy in to what Lampard was trying to do against City, and they all seem to be on board with it. There was commitments, that there was organisation, there was players taking responsibility. To then rip that up was, amongst many words, naive and a very poor decision from the manager. It's always easy with hindsight. And people will say, well, you're playing at home, you're playing Brighton, horses for courses and all that. But as we've seen this season, and a lot of teams have seen this season, Brighton are a good side.
Yeah.
And they'll play, high intensity, quick football. They've got a clear identity. And to try and set up a team in the way that he did, and with no precedence there. And what I mean by that is we've not played well in that system for a long time. And as you've just alluded to, we got dismantled by Bournemouth twice with that same system, albeit different personnel. To look at the only positive performance that we've had in a long time against arguably the best team in the world, and then to just rip that up and go with something else is ludicrous.
So that sort of points the blame for last night, at least, towards the manager. He's getting an awful lot of flack. There's a question. I want to go back in time a little bit to Boxing Day, and I'm interested to get your take on this. My personal opinion is, statistically, I can't argue that he's a very, very good Everton manager. The main thing he's actually brought is a connection and a togetherness and a feeling. I think Everton fans have latched onto Lampard. He's overly reached out at times, and it's helped. I think the comment after the Wolves game was dangerous for me, where he sort of said the fans. He never said these words, but it was everything but the fans caused the Wolves' second goal. I don't think that's a road he should have gone down. He's put his foot on that road. He's going down it. Are you feeling now, some Everton fans are disconnected with the manager?
No, not necessarily. Do you know what? It's a dangerous road that he went down. I don't necessarily disagree with him, but we're talking about professional footballers here playing at
Mm.
the very, very highest level. And we're also talking about a manager who should be preparing his players for those situations. And if his players has any type of conviction in the way that the manager had set them up in terms of their responsibilities, what was expected of them, situations like that don't fluster you. But
Yeah,
when you're low on confidence and you're not really sure and you haven't really got any idea, which is two of the things that me and Pricey says in our instant match, the players didn't really look like they knew what they were doing. That's the bigger problem. It's not the fans getting frustrated. Fans were getting frustrated because they could tell the players didn't know what they were doing.
yeah,
So I think that's the bigger problem there. I don't necessarily disagree with them. I think we've said before our fans can become quite toxic and can get very impatient and frustrated. But in that instance, and in some of the instances like Bournemouth, it was warranted. Albeit I've started on very much on the front foot in terms of attacking Lampard. This is a fallout from last night's game. I think that was a huge factor. The changes that he made last night, and almost the message it sends out when you drop your man of the match in Ben Godfrey, who for me was by a country mile man of the match in terms of the way he dealt with Haaland,
yeah,
his athleticism, his commitment on the ball, off the ball. To drop him and to drop him because he was changing the system was a very poor decision, and I think it sent out a message. And he's brought in Tom Davies, for God's sake. Do you know what I mean? He's brought in Dwight McNeil. Two players he's brought in there, are so far from what we want to see on the pitch. It's untrue. So I think there's so many messages sent out by the decisions he made last night, and albeit credit to the fans that they've pinpointed the board at long last with the chance and with their anger. Not that they haven't done with the campaign and stuff that's went on, but it would have been easy to go, let's get the manager out because he's responsible for last night. But
yeah.
thankfully, the fans have recognised, and I'm going to recognise that there's a bigger picture here. I don't think personally getting rid of Lampard and bringing another manager in is going to change anything but a few results in the short term. But
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I didn't hear any sack the manager chance last night. I heard the sack the board chance. Now, there's always been that. That's always been a thing, whether it be a campaign 10, 12, 13 years ago that was in existence, whether it be a campaign that last year came out, whether it be a campaign now that's sort of trying to rebrand itself. There's always been an element of the hierarchy of this football club is failing us. But when that many fans chant it last night, and yeah, people react. I've always used this phrase: if you stub your toe, you'll swear in front of your kids. You shouldn't, but you'll react. So people are angry in the moment, and I get that. We're now seeing reports that there's going to be more protests at the Arsenal game. You're hearing these chants last night, rightly or wrongly, whether fans are right or wrong. What's your opinion on fans now getting onto the board? These sack the board chants. Is it about time? Is it something we shouldn't really go near? Should we try and get behind the team? Where do you stand on it?
Where do you draw the line? Like, I was of the opinion at the end of last season that it was the wrong time because there was a very immediate threat of relegation, and
Yeah,
shifting the focus from supporting the players to having a go at the very top end of the club, and it wasn't the most conducive of decisions, I don't think, from fan groups, in my opinion. Although I'm not disagreeing with the opinions that they were based on. My fear, and I think the reason why I think this is the right time to be turning on the board, is that I don't want to allow them that excuse again of just getting rid of the manager and think that, okay, well, we're making the right decision here, we're getting rid of the manager, and therefore that's the problem, is the manager. I've started by saying my piece on Lampard, and I think he'll be sitting there himself thinking, kicking himself, wondering why he made that decision. However, he doesn't really have a decision to make, and the reason I say that is that the performance against City, as good as it was, unfortunately, because of the squad of players we've got, that's the only card he's got to play, is to sit back, defend, and hope for a moment of brilliance, which he got from Damari Gray. Without that moment of brilliance, let's be honest, we didn't create a chance, and we didn't look like creating a chance, albeit it was a spirited performance. Teams have created chances against City this season at will almost, but City outscored them most of the time.
Yeah.
We didn't look like we were going to create a chance there if we played there for 5 games. So the reason I come on to that point is that I don't think that getting rid of Frank Lampard is going to change anything. And all we're going to see if we get rid of Lampard and bring in a Dyche or a Moyes or whoever it is that we will see 9-10 men behind the ball every single game, and set pieces, counter attacks, and we'll have the same moaning from people anyway, saying, "Is this what we are now? Is this all we're going to be? All right, we're going to stay up, but I don't want to watch this dross." So we are going to be right back to where we were before. We spoke at length before this podcast, before this game, about the poor recruitment decisions once again. You're not telling me that a manager or a person, forget about the manager now, a person like Lampard, who's won so many trophies in his career, who's been part of so many successful teams, you're not telling me that Dwight McNeil and Neil Maupay were top of his list. You've seen the players that we were linked with around Europe, top players, Kudus, who lit the World Cup alight, other players in France and whatever that would have made a big difference, that would have been promising. Anana, I don't think is a bad sign, and I think he was the type of player that Lampard probably wanted in. I think that was the profile of player. He was looking for someone who was players who were athletic. Ghana guy probably was not top of his list, but I think he wanted a bit of an enforcer, a bit of a stopper in there.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of our money has been spent on Neil Maupay and Dwight McNeil. And that does not give Lampard any attacking card to play whatsoever. Because when we come out and try and play on the front foot like we did last night, McNeil's got to play, or Maupay's got to play, or both of them have got to play.
He doesn't even run. McNeil, I like all his stats, like the stats last year at Burnley was sort of like, okay, you're not going to get a lot of output, but he's a really good player in relation to helping the team. And I'm not even seeing that. There was a clip of the Wolves game, that went on Twitter, where we had a counter attack, and he was just jogging, and the referee jogs past him. The referee is faster in an Everton counter attack than our winger. Last night he gets booed off. And
I mean, I'm surprised at how poor he is. I mean, apart from the odd delivery and decent, he's got a good left foot, I'll give him that. But he reminds me of Billy Electronov, but he can't shoot.
Yeah.
Billy Electronov, it wouldn't run either. But if you give him the ball within 20, 25 yards, he's at the target, or he'd score a few goals, and he has a decent, delivery from a corner. But look, it's not.
That's the one signing for me, Judge. That's the one sign that I don't understand. Now, the two you've said there, and I completely agree. We had one chance with the Richarlison money. We all know Richarlison had to go. We know the reasons why. We know why it was him because of the value. We know, you can see by the date it happens why it was done. So then you've got wiggle room. So say Everton have had 80% of that money available because it was up front.
Yeah.
We're not going to get that chance again because the assets are being stripped from this squad. There's probably one or two left now. And we had a golden chance in the summer to reinvest that money wisely. I can understand the Maupay one to an extent because it was obvious we were after Broja or Broya. Yeah. And then when that didn't happen and Dominic Calvert-Lewin was injured, I can see that they've said there's these level of players available and it's at these deals that are comfortable for us. We can put X amount of money up front and we get a Premier League striker in. I can get that one to an extent. McNeil, I just don't get. I honestly don't get it.
No, and the reason why, not only from an investment point of view, and as you say, the legacy now of us mean we're not going to get that money again. And the other factor is on that one, and this is where you start to really question the board, because like you said, you can understand to a certain extent the Maupay decision, but also if you're Kevin Thelwell and you've got that level of responsibility, you've got to think about where's the sell-on value there. No, in Maupay, there's zero sell-on value. You potentially getting a championship team who goes, okay, well, we'll take him because we know we'll get 15, 20 goals from the championship, or we're coming up into the Premier League, we're playing 2 up front, we've got a big man, we're on a lit man to go inside, and we'll pay a couple of million for him. But like you say, we're never getting that money back, and it's again, it's just a lack of strategic, just a lack of foresight completely from the. And you go back to your point there about, look, we need a Premier League striker. We didn't. We needed a target man. We desperately needed someone big, physical, quick, whatever you call it. And we haven't got that. And let's look at Brighton then. Let's look at Brighton, because that's a a bit of a blueprint that whether we've ignored or not been able to execute. Evan Ferguson plays last night. Don't know if it was his debut. It was certainly one of his first starts, if not his first Premier League start. 18 years of age, no real Premier League experience, but he's got a little bit of physicality about him. And clearly he's played with those players in training and they understand what he's capable of. We've overlooked 2, 3, 4 very promising youngsters this year in favour of piss poor so-called Premier League players. You've got Price who's been given a bit of a run out last night, but it was a pathetic one because we were already 3-0 down when he comes on. You've got Mills again, who's been overlooked several times this season when players around him, more senior to him, have not performed. You've got Tom Cannon, who's come on, who's looked bright. He looked very good for the under-23s, and you've got Morpay, who's playing game after game instead of him. We're dragging back Ellis Sims, which is the wrong decision for him as a player, as an asset of the club, but we're dragging him back to bring him on for the last 10 minutes when we're 4-0 down. Whatever is going on behind the scenes in terms of how we're looking after our young players, the decisions across the board in terms of playing our better players, sending out other players, bringing them back, it just stinks of, again, a lack of foresight and any real strategy.
What's that thing they said they done in January and over what Kale was involved with, the strategic review of the football club, and you go into the summer and do that.
But the strategic review is about putting the right people in the right places, isn't it? And how many people did we see leave the academy when he who shall not be named was in charge? But then the club brought them back again and put them back in the same positions. Now, whatever we think of Benitez, he clearly walked in and seen some things that were not right. And look, some of the decisions he made, we're now living with, and we're having to try and struggle with. The Danny Donachie one being one of them. But some of the decisions he made were right. They were the right calls to get rid of some of the old guards in there. But this strategic review has led to the same people coming back again who failed the club at different levels in the academy. So it's look, I think going back to the original question and the point about the pressure on the board, it's the right time now to put the foot down on it. The only concern, and it's the same concern that we had last time, is what are we going to get from it? What's the alternative here? Is it Mashiri again walking away and leaving us in the hands of some completely irresponsible owner? And who's to say that Mashiri isn't responsible? But there have been something. He has put a hell of a lot of money into the club, whether it's him or his backers. But there's a lot of cash that's come into this football club courtesy of him, albeit the people who've been responsible for spending that cash have not done it very wisely.
I don't think Mashiri is committed enough post Bramley Moore to make the long-term decisions now. I don't think you're going to see him. I think he might appease a little bit. Like he probably thought putting Graham Sharp on the board and hiring David Prentice, who was well liked at the Echo. He maybe thought they would appease Evertonians. Look, it doesn't take a blind man could have seen last season that the reason that we got Lampard over Pereira is because Mashiri bowed to the fans who didn't want Pereira. So I think he does react. I'm worried that any changes he does make now, because it's not long term, won't benefit us. It'll be a reactionary. It'll be a sack the manager. It'll be a put Tim Cahill on the front of the matchday programme with an interview and he's part of something. And I just don't know. I'm really worried, lads. Honestly, really am.
Yeah, and that's it. I think what we can say, what I would like to think anyway, is the results we've had, the defeats, and he said this a few times himself, however capable or not capable he is, he's learning first-hand lessons about the team, about the capabilities of the squad, you'd like to think. I don't think he's stupid. So let's go back to the positives of Lampard, and I think his personality is one of them. The fans have took to his personality. He's honest. He says what he sees. Even, the comments he made about the Wolves game, he's seen it firsthand, the impact that the fans has had on his players So he's called it as he's seen it. I think he's the right personality. I would have thought that the likes of Clemens would have gave him a little bit more tactical support in the positions he's been in. He's worked under Ancelotti himself. He's worked under some top managers. I'd like to think that will have an impact over time. Anyone we bring in now is just going to have to, revert to defaults of us being defensive and whatever, and then maybe certain players are going to get a pass again. And I just don't know where we're going to get to from that. I mean, who's to say, apart from the Bramley Moore situation, I don't think relegation is the worst thing in the world for this team. It's only the Bramley Moore thing. And I know you said last year, look, relegation will send us into the abyss, but we need to wipe the slate clean at some point, because we're never, ever going to, I don't think at the moment, if we continue to sack managers, we're never ever going to get to a position where we actually know what we've got and we know what needs to be done. I think Lampard has got a pretty fair idea of what needs to happen. I don't think that sacking Lampard is the answer. However, going back to my point at the start of the podcast, if he continues to think that he can change the makeup of these players and turn them into attacking wizards overnight, and turn McNeil's into Sully Marches like we seen last night, and the polar opposite of what we actually got, then he's the wrong man, and we do need to just take him out of that position and put someone in there who knows what they're working with. But I just hope now, having seen the two Bournemouth games, having seen the game last night, I'm going to discount the Wolves game, because I don't think that was by any way, shape or form our worst performance. I think if we take them chances and Anthony Gordon takes his chance and Morpie takes his chance, I think at another day we win that game. But the Bournemouth games, last night's game versus the Man City game, should tell you what this squad and group of players are capable of doing and doing well. And that's defending and being a little bit better at set plays. If we do that, I think this team stays in the league fairly comfortably. But I think if he continues to try to play in a way that this team's not capable of doing, then ultimately it'll be his job. It'll be his neck, that it'll be him that goes first, and the team may well follow after that.
How long do you think he has?
The Southampton game. The Southampton game, if he sets up the team, and I'm not saying go defensive against Southampton, but if he plays a back three with those three centre-backs, I don't think Southampton score more than one goal against us, and that's a good start. I think we outscore Southampton if we play three at the back, and we have Onana back in the team, and we play Calvert-Lewin up front with someone else, probably Damari Gray again. I think we beat Southampton. I really do. The one that's concerning me at the moment is probably the Nathan Patterson one, because you put Coleman in there and Mykolenko, and it's a back five, isn't it? It's almost a flat back five, because we haven't really got the attacking prowess there, and that's the one that concerns me, is I'm thinking we can't play a back five with those two wing backs.
I think you put Iwobi there like he's at the end of last season.
Potentially, do you put Iwobi and Vinagre in there? I don't know if that makes us too attacking and that kind of defeats the objective. I don't know. I would probably keep Mykolenko in there, because by putting him in there, Godfrey goes to the right side. We've kind of got a flat back four if we need it, and Iwobi pushes on. Now's not the time to be tactically talking about what we do about Southampton. But to answer your question, that's the game for me. If we get beat by Southampton, if that manager sets us up in a way that allows Southampton to exploit us, despite what I've said, he's not the right manager to work with this group of players, unfortunately.
I think, and obviously we don't know anything. We don't have relationships with in the nose or with the club. I think it's close. I don't think he lasts much longer. I think with an ITV1 Friday night drubbing away from him being relieved, I think if he goes to United, and even if we get beat, if we play a good game, and the pundits are not relentless on us, and they just say, look, Everton set up well, it was a matter of better players. Okay, and it's bad. I think he's gone.
You could be right. Yeah, I don't think for a second that there's any question how he's setting up against Man United. He'll literally look at that City game and go, City, Man United, better than us, loads of attacking players, loads of ways that they can attack. We can't go toe-to-toe with them. I think it's a nap how he plays, how he sets up against Man United. So I don't. I agree with you. I think it'll probably be a maybe 2 or 3-0, maybe 3-1 or whatever. I don't think they'll completely batter us if we set up the way that we did against Man City. And therefore, I think it comes down to the Southampton game.
We spent a lot of time on the board, a lot of time on the manager. Let's move on before we close the show to the players. One thing I've seen, I've seen it at Bournemouth, and I've seen it last night. His heads are going down when we concede first now. That wasn't happening. That wasn't happening under Lampard. At the end of last season, we were, I think even at that nightmare Burnley result, I think Everton were back and forth in that game. There's games this season where we've conceded and the heads haven't gone down. Am I reading too deep into this? I'm thinking, is there now a disconnect between the dressing room and the manager?
No. I think it's dead simple. I think it couldn't be any more simple. The players know we haven't got goals. I think whatever level of football you play, if you concede first and you know that you're not blessed with goals, whether it be because of confidence or because of capability or both, then your heads do go down because you're thinking we haven't got 1 or 2. We haven't got 2 goals on us. We might get 1. We haven't got 2. But you're instantly thinking as a defender or a midfielder, we've now got to push on further, which means we're going to be vulnerable to conceding another. And if we concede another, it's over. So I wouldn't read that as being a disconnect between the manager or the manager losing the dressing room. I just think it's the fact the players know that we haven't got goals in that team. And as soon as you concede, you're thinking, how are we going to get back in this game here?
Goals win games. Creative players win games. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've stripped them from this team. We've replaced them with players who are worse. They're not even the same. Worse. We're hitting a situation where we've done a show, me, you, Tony Bellew, Gareth Fadley, Michael Ball, Pricey, where we said never again. We said after last year, can't go through it again. I think I'm geared up to go through it again. I think we're worse this season than we were last. I really do. And people will say, well, the dad's at the back and stuff. And fair enough, I get that. The 2 centre-halves are better. Of course they are. But I think as a team, I think we're worse. I'm worried. Looking from now till May, I'm worried. Are you the same? Is it a worrying situation for you?
Absolutely. For all the reasons we've said. And not least it being the fact that if this manager and I say this manager, this group of experienced staff can't work out how to get 3 points out of this team, then it's only going to be a case of again a Dyche and Moyes, which is not where we want to be going. I don't care who you are. Like you're not hands on heart saying I want to see Sean Dyche as our manager. I want to see a manager that left us in the lurch, whatever 10 years ago, come back and lead the team again. That's not hands on heart where you want this team to be or this club to be. You don't want this club to become a graveyard for young players where they can't come through. That whatever you think of Anthony Gordon, he struggled to play for this team because it's almost impossible for them to develop in and around the players, the manager, the structure that's in place. There's a lot of talented young players there, and what I wanted this season. I said it before the start of the season. I wanted this to be a season of, developing players to come through and to be better for the following season. If we finish 15th this season and we had Price, Mills, Gordon, Cannon, all in better positions, all played 10 games under the belt, I've got a few goals, they've won us a few games, the squad would instantly have more depth, and we'd have a lot more about us. We're so far away from doing that now. It's untrue because we're right in the in the thick of it, and you can't put young players into that type of position. So that's the thing I'm most fearful of now, and that's why I think we are worse off, because the only depth we've got is in the shape of our young players, and we can't use them because of the situation we're in.
And we're in the transfer window, knowing what we need. I think it's quite obvious based on the credentials of the journalists who've mentioned it, is that we're in for Elanga at United, and the story there is that they won't release him unless Ten Hag brings in one or two first. So we're going into week 2 or week 3, possibly week 4 of a massive month, still not identifying or still not being able to bring in. And now whether he's the man or not, I don't know. I don't know much about him. I know he's quick, and I know he's maybe got a turn of pace that will allow us to play maybe the way you've said, set up and try and hit teams. Fair enough. Bringing Ellis Sims back says to me there's not enough money. What we needed as a fan base last night really was the new striker paraded on the pitch before the game. Very similar to when we got Jelavic before the Man City game, if you remember, back in January. And the crowd were up and we went and beat City 1-0. Then Jelavic comes in and scores. It's apparent to me we haven't got the money to do that. So this window, what on earth do we do? We know what we need and we can't do it. Do you have to sell someone to raise funds? Is there a panic button where you have to say Jordan Pickford leaves and we reinvest in strikers?
I think there is, but you've got to make one decision before the next. You've got to decide. I think they're waiting for that Southampton game. I honestly do. I know you think it's going to happen before then, but whether it happens now or whether it happens the Southampton game, you've got to make that decision first on the manager, because you could bring another manager and the first thing he says is, what the hell have you done getting rid of England's number 1 and the most important player in this squad? So I think you've got to 100% decide what you're going to do about the manager, whether you're going to stick with him or whether you're going to replace him before you make any decisions on the squad. Even bringing Ellis Sims back, I think, was a naive one if you're not sure what you're going to do with the manager. Don't get me wrong, the next man, that's not the end of the world. The next manager could come in and could easily ship him back out on loan again. You know, that's not going to necessarily kill it. But I think it's got to, you've got to make that decision first, I think. I'm neither here or there with it. I think it's inevitable that Pickford leaves at some point. And if now's the best time to get the most money from him, then now's the best time, and let's do it. And let's get the money in. Let's get a decent keeper in. Listen, I don't think personally, if you put Asmir Begovic in goal and we reinvest the best part of 30-40 million into attacking players, I don't think we're worse off in that situation in the short term. Long term, we might be. But I think that makes this team more capable of staying in the division and holding their own. Personally, a lot of people might disagree with me, and I might disagree with myself next week. But at this moment in time, I think giving us a striker and a winger, or a striker and a number 10, 2 players who can get us, 10, 15 goals between them between now and the end of the season, I think wins us more games than having Jordan Pickford in there with this current set of attacking players.
But it's massive. It's a massive few weeks. We've only got a few weeks.
Decisions. And look, the criticisms of the board, I completely agree with, and I couldn't agree with any more. But if the board do think they've got anything about them, the next few weeks, they've got to make the right decisions. And those decisions are going to have huge ramifications on the short and long-term future of this club. Whether it be relegation, the stadium, because the stadium is pinned to potential investments, which we won't get if we're in the Championship. No. So, look, there's so many ramifications to the decisions that the boards are going to make over the next few weeks. Regardless of what the fans want, it's not going to happen now. The board is not going to be removed in this period of time. It's not. I think it's right to be putting the spotlight on them, because they do need to be forced to consider and review what's actually going on. And they either need to stand by the manager, as we've said, and give the manager the resources or the license to do what he thinks we need to do in this window, or they need to remove the manager and allow the next manager to do what he thinks he needs to do. But look, that we've chewed the fat on our end, and I think that there's it's clear that the current state of affairs and all the factors being considered, we're only going in one direction at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good place to leave it. I think we're as worried as you can see about the situation as I can see our social media. I was listening to a national sports station this morning, Evertonians calling it. It's a worrying situation. We'll be here over the next few weeks covering anything that does or doesn't happen. As you can visibly see, we're not very well, so I hope to be back in a pub environment next week and bring you some we wanted to bring some content today, just the fallout of what's happened. I think we're all really worried. God bless you, Evertonians who aren't. Send me whatever you're drinking because I need it. I'm gearing up for the sofa bed because I'll be tossed and turning in April, I think, and my wife won't be very happy. But thanks for joining us on Across the Park podcast with Ian Mills and Gary Judge. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, and any WhatsApp groups you're in, please share it as well. We're over on the Instagram and Twitter at Across the Park PC. See you again next week.